أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين. We always begin when we're gathering as believers and we're going to learn the Quran and the message of the Quran by seeking refuge and safety in the only place of refuge and safety, and that is that most apparent and yet mysteriously hidden truth that is the source of our existence. And that's where our whole entire purpose and meaning in every atom in the universe and what it is created for and how we relate to all of that is connected. And so the refuge is knowing that there is one entity with the absolute control and power and capacity to do whatever he wills in his creation. And so we begin by remembering that all things exist and function in his name and in his honor, and he has isolated his reality as it relates to us as that of benevolence and beneficence and kindness and compassion and mercy, that everything in the heavens and the earth, he says, سَخَّرَ لَكُم مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ. He has subjugated to your needs and your interests, to your usage, for your best interests, everything in the heavens and the earth. We are blessed, countless favors and blessings. So we praise him and we thank him in abundant praise. And we ask him to send his peace and blessings on Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said that Surah Al-Ikhlas is 1/3 of the Quran. It equals 1/3 of the Quran. And so that's what we want to kind of talk about today, is what is the impact of that? Why is that, right? The scholars of Quranic interpretive methodologies, they would say because the Quran is 3 parts in terms of its general content. It is a fluid masterpiece of woven manual literature guidance between who is God and what is God's message, and how will people be held accountable for that message. There are 3 parts. There are 3 fundamental themes that the entire Quran is focusing on. And so 1/3 of that is God. And so the surah, it is giving us a fundamental key point of how we should represent ourselves and who we are and what we know to the world. قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ. Say, he is God, the one and only, right? In Arabic, wahid is one, and then ithnain and thalatha and all of that, right? So this is wahid means one, but it's part of a sequence of numbers, right? But ahad means anyone, right? One at all. Ahad. If I said hal wahid minhum fil ghurfa, right? Is one of them in there? Could be any one of them in there. Could be 4 or 5 in there for all we know. If I said hal fi ahad, I'm asking, is there at least one person there? You see what I'm saying? So that word delineates a specificity of singularity in its meaning. Say he is God, the one and only. Allahu Samad. God is the absolute refuge. Samad, sumud, it means fixed firmly in a state that it is very strongly inclined to. It can't be moved, it can't be shaken, it's constant, it's absolute. It is not affected by outside influence in any way, right? And he is refuge because his fixed state in all that it represents is everything we need. You see what I'm saying? And so as many scholars from the Sahaba and the Tabi'een and others, they kind of gathered around the meaning that God is the uncaused cause, the eternal absolute entity that all others rely upon, that he exists in and of himself without any need from anything or anyone else. You see what I'm saying? So it's the answer to the logical philosophical dilemma known as the infinite regress. So if people say, well, where did God come from? You say, okay, you're into science and all that. Where did science come from? I can play the same game with you, right? Okay, well, there was a Big Bang. Where did the Big Bang come from? You see? Oh, there was a multiverse. Okay, where did that multiverse come from? And that's how that argument is going to go forever. What did the Sheikh Hamza Torsi, he said something really cool. He said, if there's a soldier who has to ask the permission of another soldier, who has to ask for another permission of another soldier to take the shot, right? And it keeps going, and there is always another soldier to ask, will the shot ever get taken? Okay, so if existence is always going to require something that came before and something came before and something, then there will never be existence in the first place. You see what I'm saying? So there has to be one entity, biological fact, that in and of itself exists, and it has the ability to cause existence. That is the only answer to your equation. Even if this is philosophy. We're not saying the Quran said so, even though the Quran does say so in many ways, and one of them is Allahu Samad, right? Okay. So when kids say, but where did Allah come from? They say Allahu Samad. God is absolute. God is not like us. And then he explains himself. Lam yalid wa lam yulad. God does not bear offspring. God does not make others like himself through some form of, creation like that, in terms of like human beings needing to have offspring, right? God creates by will. Walam yulad. And God is not created or born in any way. God is, period. And that's why everything is. And if you look at all of his attributes and qualities, right? He is a shape giver. He is one that gives order and purpose and meaning. He is the one that provides. So everything that exists is requiring certain elements and laws to function. And that is his providing. That is his structuring. That is his ordering. Those are his qualities manifesting. You see what I'm saying? And so everything is like that. So وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٍ. And there is nothing comparable to him. You should never that's the problem with atheism. It wants God to be like something that the brain is remembering or knowing or touching or feeling. You're bringing God down to a thing. God is not a thing. God is not a guy, right? This is why it's very important for us to explain to our children that when you're thinking, that's why I feel it's problematic to personalize God as like Allah, like Jews said Yahweh. Like that's like a guy named Allah or something, right? Sitting there on a throne, You see? Some people get it that way, That's where a lot of people took issue with certain anthropological or anthropomorphizing of God. God describes himself in certain ways, right? And we do not deny anything that he described himself with. But he's very clear in multiple occasions, like وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٍ, that there's nothing comparable to it. So don't start thinking, oh, God's like this, God's like that. This is the essence of blasphemy. That's where polytheism comes from, right? Once you start to picture and imagine God, God can be this statue that we make, God can be this picture that we put up, God can be like the sun or the moon. Once you start bringing God down to something you can imagine and touch, right? And that's the fallacy of humanity, is trying to make God something physically personal to them, right? That's why Jesus being sent as the Messiah, the special prophet to the Jewish community, who have very clear, strict policy that God is not like creation, cannot be like creation, never was part of creation, never could be part of creation, okay? How any Jew would have ever accepted that God came down as a person and then died, much less, okay? No Jew would have ever accepted that. That's why we know Christianity was not really formed among the followers of Jesus. It was formed by a man named Paul among Greek and Roman people who have beliefs that God, Zeus, has children like Hercules and others through actual people. That's a belief they have. Gods can come down and walk on the earth among them. So it was easy to propagate such beliefs around those people. You see what I'm saying? But you could have never gotten away with that in front of a Jew. And every modern Jew would say, of course we don't believe Jesus is our Messiah, because it goes against all the things they're saying about him don't have nothing to do with our belief system, right? So true sincerity, the heart's contentment for the purpose of why I do what I do, that is rooted in this surah, recognizing that there is only one reference point for our existence, one reference point for our meaning, for our needs, for our value, one reference point for what can hold us accountable. When you have that reference point, it does not matter who or what else is saying or doing. You see what I'm saying? It's a sense of contentment, it's a sense of comfort you gain from that monotheistic clarity of the absolute refuge. So it's understanding this absolute unique oneness of God. This is the clear theme in this ayah. But the part of, or in the surah, the ayah in the surah, Allahu Samad, the rest of the surah is that God is one and God is absolute and unique. But this Samad is God is the one that we rely upon, the only one that we can or should rely upon. If we're relying on someone after relying upon God, we know that they are under His authority, and whether they will be able to do whatever or whatever we expect to happen is because God wanted it or not. And we know that His knowledge and wisdom is supreme. So psychologists will all agree that what we are talking about, which is very mainstream, established theological creed, is very good for mental health. It is a very solid way to bring people back to a state of comfort no matter how bad things get. You see what I'm saying? Because you can easily forget all of the problems of these people and my surroundings and what's happening, because you're like, I don't need any of that. That's not going to have any consequential effect in my reality unless I allow it. So He has no needs. He does not rely or depend on anything whatsoever, and we are fully reliant upon it. Imam al-Ghazali explained Surah Al-Ikhlas. He said, He is the one we turn to in need, in recognition that all we are, want, and can be comes from Him. Right? Imam Abu Hamad Ghazali, he said that Allah being As-Samad, He's the one that we turn to in recognition that all we are, all we want, and all we can be is coming from Him and Him alone, and none other. Allahu Samad. So that sense of knowledge and that intimate connection with this truth gives life very objective meaning and purpose, and a sense of comfort in adversity. When the companions migrated to Medina, they were broken, they were poor, they were struggling, and it's well documented that they all got very sick, because of course when you travel from one place to another, all these new environments and situations. So the Prophet ﷺ, he turned to Allah and made a beautiful prayer in that situation after they had gone there. He said, Allahumma ja'al hubb Medina ka hubbi Makkata aw ashad. Right? He said, Oh Allah, make our love for Medina just like or better than our love was for Mecca. Meaning what? Help us in this transition. Make us comforted in that this is our new place of living and we have to come to terms with it. And what happened? Medina is still, till this day, if you ever go there, of course we know that the covenant was given to Abraham and his son Ishmael, and that was in Mecca. And we know that the Kaaba represents that reference point for the unity of God through His revelation, through the unity of believers. But when you go into the Prophet's mosque and you stay there for no matter how long, and you walk out and walk around, there is a sense of tranquility and comfort that is not there in Mecca. Allahu Akbar. The Prophet's prayer is still there for John, who came from Oklahoma, when he goes across the ocean to experience it. This is powerful stuff. It was a prayer from a sincere heart to As-Samad, who can make things a way that you can never imagine. Prophet ﷺ taught us a beautiful prayer, and he used to make this prayer often in his prayers, and I often, use it in the Qunut al-Witr. Prophet ﷺ, Allahumma aslih li dini, huwa asmatu amri. Right? Prophet ﷺ said, repair for me my practice of your will, because that is all that protects me. Right? So the Prophet ﷺ, he made that prayer. Then he says, Allahumma aslih lana dunyana allati fiha ma'ashuna. I'm giving the plural collective on this one. Right? So, repair for me my worldly living. Make it in its best form, because that's all I have to live by as I'm here in this world. وَأَصْلِحْ لِي آخِرَتِي هِيَ مَعَادِي إِلَيْهَا مَعَادِي. So repair for me and make best for me my passing into the hereafter and my eventual remaining in the hereafter, because that's where I am going to return. That's where I will be. وَجَعَلِ الْحَيَاةَ زِيَادَةً لِي فِي كُلِّ خَيْرٍ. Make this life that I'm living a permanent increasing in good, that I may benefit. وَجَعَلِ الْمَوْتَ رَاحَةً لِي مِنْ كُلِّ شَرٍ. Make death a sense of comfort and relief from all of the hardship and evil of this world. Right? So the Prophet ﷺ is talking to a samad who can make anything anyway, and he's saying, make my path as a believer, as one who is doing your will, strong, safe, and secure. Make my worldly living that I have the necessities to feed and clothe myself and all of these things. That I have a place to lay my head, and give me contentment in that. Make my passing in the hereafter easy and something that is removing from me all of my afflictions and difficulties. Make life and death blessed and meaningful in every way. This is a prayer that is talking to Allah holistically. The holistic prayer that the Prophet ﷺ often made. So the dua al-jami'. Prophet ﷺ, he used to make many very big, broad prayers, that seem like it's covering everything. And that's the attitude of one who knows who is As-Samad. The young student of the Prophet ﷺ, Abdullah ibn Abbas, he once asked the Prophet ﷺ, teach me something, that will give me a thorough meaning of my life as a believer. He says, Ya ghulam, inni u'allimuka kalimat. I'm going to tell you some words. Ihfadillaha yahfadhka. Right? You must preserve God in your mindfulness, in your remembrance. And if you do that, if you think of Him, if you remember Him, then He will protect you. He will be there with you. Ihfadillaha tajidhu tijahak. If you keep your mind and your tongue wet in the remembrance of God, you will find Him there with you wherever you go. إِذَا سَأَلْتَ فَاسْأَلِ اللَّهِ. If you're going to ask anyone for anything, ask God. وَإِذَا اسْتَعَنْتَ فَاسْتَعِنْ بِاللَّهِ. And if you're going to seek any help or any assistance from anyone, then ask God. He says, لو أن الأمة لو اجتمعت على أن ينفعوك بشيء لم ينفعوك إلا بشيء قد كتبه الله لك والعكس. Prophet ﷺ said, if the whole world has gathered together in a plan to bless you and benefit you or give you something that is not the divine will for you, it will never be yours. And if the whole world gathered together to attack you or cause harm to you, it will never happen unless God has willed it, because the pen has been lifted and the ink is dry, right? And so the first part is saying that you in your relationship with As-Samad, with the absolute refuge, fully capable and the only reference or source of anything we need, if you stick with Him, He can make everything in your best interest. The more you are consciously seeking Him and asking of Him, the more He can make it for you. So in that personal relationship, don't feel like, oh, it is the way it is, it's written, because it is written according to your intentional, sincere seeking of him in your life and what he represents. If you choose not to, it could be different. But outside of that, other people, don't worry and don't be bothered at all, because they have no power and no ability to cause any affliction. قُلْ لَن يُصِيبَنَا إِلَّا مَا كَتَبَ اللَّهُ لَنَا هُوَ مَوْلَانَا. Tell people, nothing can harm or afflict any of us except for that which Allah has written. Meaning nobody has any powers. No jinns, no people, no black magics, no nothing, except for Allah willed it. So if you want to remove that, what was the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ's companions? What did he teach about ruqya shar'iyya? He taught each and every believer to be doing that every day for themselves. Ruqya is not something that you hire the sheikh to come do or something like that. This is unfortunately where we've gone with it. You know, we've got the holy men, the clergies now. But no. Each companion had their jobs and their families, and none of them had PhD degrees or some sort of whatever Imam Alamiya course or something like that. They just lived around the Prophet and studied the Quran and the Hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, and whenever they woke up, they had certain prayers, and after prayer, they had certain prayers, and then in the afternoon, they had prayers, and they were constantly in the remembrance of God, and they know that whatever harm comes to me is good for me because it's alleviating my sins. It's purifying me. It's reminding me that I am not home and that there is a heaven to be looking forward to, and I shouldn't expect to have it here, right? So they see it like that. They don't see it like, oh no, it's an existential crisis that I need some other holy person to solve for me. Let's get our home together and let's make sure we are in the remembrance of God. Let's make sure that we are collectively in this remembrance and mindfulness of Al-Samad. So what are the three kind of points? As we said, God is the eternal, absolute source of all possibilities. Anything that possibly could happen is only going to happen from Al-Samad. So we should go to him for all of our needs. And we rely upon him for all of our hopes and dreams. And we know that our hopes and dreams are most clearly manifested in the eternity of heaven. Like that should be, if anybody's like, well, I have to be this, and I have to get this degree, and I have to become this career, I have to marry this person and this thing. If you're getting caught up in that, no, you have lost the narrative here. You've gone off the point, you know. The second point is be a place of refuge for others, right? Be Allah's sumudiyyah for those that are struggling, because they're going to ask Allah, and He's going to use you. إِذَا أَرَادَ اللَّهُ بِعَبْدٍ خَيْرًا إِسْتَعْمَلَهُ. If God wants good for someone, He uses that person for His cause, right? And so when somebody's in need, you want to be there. The Prophet ﷺ said, أَحَبْ أَوْ أَحْسَنْ النَّاسِ أَنْفَعُهُمْ لِلنَّاسِ. The most beloved to God, the best to Him, is those who are most beneficial to other people. People who bring benefit to others. People who are a source of others' needs being fulfilled. We should be that. Learn the many attributes of Allah. When you learn who God is in all of its forms, then that sumudiyya in so many different shades and shapes and colors becomes clear to you, right? So His being the eternal absolute, something that is in and of itself existing and requires nothing outside of itself, something that has the source of all of everything else in it. Everything else requires and depends upon it. So when you know all of His other attributes, the sumudiyya becomes clear. You know, this absoluteness, this refuge in all these different ways. And so when we know all of that, that becomes a sense of purpose and meaning fulfilled in our lives. So I think this is inshallah our talk for today.